Hello, and I'm back again. I had mentioned in a previous video and called The Message of Hope from the Council of Wisdom from May of 22. I wanted to do a follow-up with the council with a question and answer period where I could maybe get them to elaborate on some of the messages that they had put forth in that. I was going to put that on my Patreon page and just decided that it really needed to be something. If people wanted to understand what the council were saying, they should have access to that. So I've gone ahead and just created this video with that question and answer period and with you in mind. So if you follow up, let's begin with that question and answer period on the next slide. Thank you for being with me today, and thank you for giving a moment of your day to the Council of Wisdom and all of their love and joy that they are hoping to share with us. Today is May 22nd of 2022. This video and this taping is a follow-up to the message that I received from the Council of Wisdom on the 17th with regard to what they call a message of hope. There were things in there that kind of left me wondering about some of the details, and they're not always completely clear on some of the things that they're referring to with regard to saying secret means secret, so they're not going to divulge what that secret is, of course. But I asked a question and answer period of them if they would be willing to do that with me so I could get my questions with regard to their message answered, and they were willing to do that. The following is that question and answer session that I had with them. This was regarding the message of hope on the 17th. I asked them, you have spoken of the stopgap method of preventing humanity from seeking power in the darkness and becoming extinct as a result of such as the Atlanteans or the Atlantis, which now cease to exist. It seems that we are headed in that same direction already as the powers that be seek more and more power in a crazed effort to take over the world. Would you elaborate, please, on how the intervention or stopgap will occur? Their answer. The intervention that was offered to the Atlanteans was of an entirely different sort. They were offered knowledge and wisdom, and that wisdom converted them to hunger-crazed people who wished to be elevated above all others. The result of their pride and temperament, which was out of control, led them to seek power versus cooperation and community. It became a race for elevation of one over the other. It was jealousy that drove them. They were not as advanced as your storytellers project. They were a test like all else on earth has been since the beginning. In order that that same scenario not play out, we have offered enlightenment in the vein of understanding of the universe outside the confines of the planet. That was not offered before. Now we expect that those who grasp the theme of change and growth as universal and not limited to the design of a single species or planet, that the spirit of cooperation will be better realized this time. Stopgap, by definition, is a temporary way of dealing with a problem or satisfying a need. So as you see, this is meant to be a temporary band-aid until the real truth is revealed to the populace of the planet. That truth will bring about a major shift in awareness and ultimately the understanding of the forces outside the planet's atmosphere, which are indeed in charge of everything. These are the things yet unseen by any who are dwelling on this planet. My question for them then was, please describe what you mean by things yet unseen. Their answer. Things are not so easily described. If you imagine that every being not in a place of matter is not so easily described in form. So if so, what form can energy take? Nearly any. It means that we are going to open the minds and eyes of those who refuse to see or believe in anything metaphysical in nature. Metaphysical or to a reality beyond what is perceptible to the senses. We would define metaphysical as a study of the unknown in an attempt to make it understood. Metaphysics looks for commonalities in events and experiences in order to establish a mean or a norm, and in that define truth as it is unknown. An example would be a multitude of reports of people dying and seeing a bright white light. If many have seen it, it must be true. But you see, based upon the speculation of what is not yet known, in an attempt to find truth, one can still surmise what forms energy may take. It can be in the form of any of the elements of the planet, a wind, a stone, water, and even fire. Based upon that, how would you define an unseen energy that still has form and is yet unseen? My reply, or in a question, was invisible. Their reply, yes, but nonetheless with form. So if there is a secret group formed, or many formed, and they are invisible, they are not divisible, and thus they retain their strength in numbers, and their numbers are many. So what if an invisible force with great energy were to become visible? Would that which is not acknowledged as real thus become a new reality? My reply, yes. Would that new awareness alter humanity's perception of their own power, their personal power, or the validity of it? My reply, yes. And would that new power, now being empowered, have new influence over the minute power of humanity? They being now disempowered by a much greater and much larger force. The only logical reply is yes. My question, so if the powers are now formless, are you stating they will come here in forms that are visible, and that awareness of the power they possess will grant that humanity has to acknowledge its lack of control or influence? Their answer, that will be the purpose and intent, yes. My question, are the plans in place for the near future? Their reply, yes. The storehouses are full of plans and details and timelines. The harvest, as you know, is complete and has been for some time. Our storehouses of the awakened are full, and the knowledge of their salvation is at the forefront of the plan that has been formulated. Many are those who still flounder in the obscurity of religious beliefs, and they are meant to be secured as well, if for no other reason than for their faithfulness. We have chosen a route that begins in the center of the European continents, and we will dispel the lies that the second coming will be in the Vatican. Then word will spread of the new powers that have stepped into view, and the rest of the world will clamor to see what has been revealed. If you are expecting a messianic entity to unveil itself, deflate that hot air that has puffed up the churches of the world. If you are expecting a horde of enlightened and glistening beings to appear in the clouds, that too is inflated. My question, what then can we expect? Their answer, a herd, if you will, of beings not unlike yourselves, but of a truly different understanding of the universe and your role in it. You may realize a race of people in white robes who have never been known before now, not monks, not hermits, not even priests, no. These beings are different in every way, and it will be obvious by the look in their eyes and the energy that emanates from their words and actions. My question, where will they come from? The answer, from a higher dimension that is very near your own. These are sixth plane beings, and they have never entered in before in a visible or tangible form. However, they have been among you all. They are teachers, they are healers, and they are mentors. They will lift the enlightened out of the grips of darkness once and for all. You see, everything going on here has been experienced before. And we stated when we first met you, we have seen this before, and we can help you understand what is going on and how to protect yourselves through your cooperation and compliance in the manner in which this planet is destined to unfold. It will be as if a book opens and the words on the pages come spilling out. Now you have asked us to make haste. We ask the same of you. Make haste in letting people know that help is on the way, and just when it seems nothing could get darker, it will, and then they will come. They will come when the darkness in all is its stupor and vainglory have fallen in a total disrepute. You see, men are sheep, and they require a shepherd, and as long as they are in that inane form of disenfranchised people, when the fallen are evident, they will look for new leaders. They will wander like the blind leading the blind until a new form of leadership offers them what they have yearned for centuries. These new shepherds will engage them in a new paradigm of self-empowerment and self-direction, and a new freedom of holy expression of the meaning of living in the light. Being given freedom of choice, the choice will be obvious: freedom versus enslavement. The concept of freedom is hard to define, I ask, unless one has lived autonomously outside the realm of governing bodies, say it in a self-sustained environment, etc. How can people conceive the idea of freedom from government? Can you describe it, please? Their answer: now we come to the crux of our message, the truth and the whole truth of the plan as it will play out. When life is viewed not as a trial, but as a reward, then it will be lived joyously and not in fear and dread. Here and now, life is a trial. You are on trial every day. Life is not a place of release. It is a place of confinement to work, attaining, having, and not being. Your mind just shifted, Lana, to imagining a world without work. We did not mean to infer that. Until one is no longer matter, some form of work will be required to retain the sustenance of the body and what it needs. It will still be necessary. Imagine instead a simpler way of life, just living and being. Do what one must do to live and nothing more. The rest of the day is spent in adoration and loving expressing of the possibilities of the human race. Development of technological advances will provide for all people, not those who can exploit need for personal gain. Here's an example of cooperation. One inspired individual has a new idea about producing clean, pure water for consumption by all living organisms. Thus, a community comes together to construct the devices and put them into use. The idea is shared everywhere, and thus everyone has access to clean water. The mutual collaboration in the construction of said device is a way of contributing to the greater good of all humanity. That is how the planet is designed to function, the planet. It gives freely to all inhabitants without claiming the patent. The planet, like Source, asks for nothing in return except everyone becomes a better version of themselves. Why would anyone find that scenario unappealing? And yet, because of fear of loss or fear of lack, most do not wish for such a world. That is because they find their value in the approval of others and not within the self. This see-me world is the best example of the deception of the rich and famous. The struggle to have and do is not based upon sound principles of enlightenment. It is based upon greed. Why do you think celebrities are taking such a political stance these days? Because money qualifies them and anyone is as an expert, but in what field? My answer to that was opinions, and everybody has one. So then they said to me after a pause, Lana, how would you define heaven? Think carefully, please. I gave it a moment and I replied, I said, peace on earth. Yes, to live in peace on this beautiful ball in the cosmos. I adore the trees, the wildlife, the smell of rich soil. I love a good conversation with an intellectual friend. I relish the conversations I have with beings from the light. I love seeing others develop in thought and deliberation. It has seemed an impossible dream and an elusive promise that we cling to in hopes of someday. You know, I think when one dies, they die of that broken dream. Then destiny courses through and they return to the earth in hopes of helping to create that same dream for everybody. And now at my age, I know it is not meant to be in my lifetime. For in a world of light and dark, the tension and violence are always the path people choose to create with. We are self-defeating and then we blame God. Question: how will we be different? How can we be different in this space-time when it is not yet our time? Their answer. The answer lies in the magnitude of the reach. Ask how you reach people and help them understand that they are not powerless and they are not just sitting on a stump under a tree with a pipe and a flute waiting for change to come to them. Thus, therein lies the rub, as the bard would say. How can people be convinced that they can voluntarily change to a higher thought form? By changing their minds, literally, that is what is meant by enlightenment. It is a way of life beyond and above the normal way of just getting through life, and instead creating life as it can or could be. If masses can be influenced to comply with mask mandates for COVID, for their own safety and that of others, then can you see how the conditioning of human behavior can be influenced for other good reasons? Let light illumine the messages of how the masses can become a self-regulating and making the right choices for the sake of all without the sovereign influence or force of some leaders and governments. How can we do that? When we can convince people that it is for their benefit. Thus they said to me at the end of this, thus we have found ways of making people understand it is for their benefit. This is the end of that transmission from them, and then what they ended it with was, please reflect on this concept until the next time when we pose more questions for you to consider, and to consider in the light. I really do sincerely thank you for spending the time with me today and allowing me to be in your company. I know that your time is important to you, and I know that we have so many questions, things going on in our minds all the time about where our world is headed and where we're headed and what our future is like, and having some idea of, do we persevere, do we hang in there, do we keep struggling, and knowing that there's a good reason for it, and knowing that we have this possibility before us, that we learn to think in a different way. We just change our minds about culture, religion, and all of those things that have us separated from one another. Take the time after listening to the promises from the Council of Wisdom and think about the net possibilities, think about your possibilities, and give yourself the opportunity to be the best you can be. Thank you.